There's just a little extra delay for the second part. Okay, hey everyone. I'm Stacy with the Iowa City Public Library. I'm joined by Alyssa. I don't know which direction she is for you. And we're going to talk to you about managing your passwords today. We did this presentation a few months ago. Was anybody at one before? If you were, we'll be interested to hear at the end if you made any changes and how they went. But here we are. We are all stuck with having passwords, and keeping track of them is not easy for anyone. Let me share my screen for our little presentation here. Okay. All right. So if any of this looks familiar to you, it also looks familiar to us and everybody else who has to deal with logging into accounts. Before we get going though, I want to give a little legal disclaimer where are going to talk you through issues with passwords and password managers, but remember that you'll want to make your own decisions carefully because some of them include paid fees. Things might change over time and nothing is totally perfect when it comes to online security. So we're going to present what's recommended by experts right now, but please don't hold the library responsible for anything that goes wrong for you. And I will pass it over to Alyssa.
Alrighty, so to start off with, you might be familiar or you might have heard some of these bad ideas that are revolving around passwords. So, things like using a weak password. There's always that little indicator of how strong or weak your password is when you're typing in a new one. Another bad idea is reusing a password in multiple places or making small changes to the same password for different accounts, like just adding that extra exclamation point at the end to satisfy the character limit or the character minimum, or things like electing to log into new websites using your Google or Facebook logins. You might remember if you had attended the algorithms class, we talked about this a little bit there, that not only does that give Google and Facebook more data on the different services you're using, but if one of those accounts gets hacked, then all of them, they have access to whatever you have logged in using those. And then also, saving a list of your passwords as an electronic file in either your email or cloud storage can also be a bad idea. Just for, electronic storage is not secure enough to store a password in that way. So from there, so just keeping these in mind of why, thinking about why are these bad ideas? So we're gonna talk about next about how your passwords can get stolen or might be hacked. And so these are the various things that we're going to cover. So let's start off with using a common password. So Stacey, you want to go ahead? So for the first stuff, you can go to this website, and I highly recommend just going and looking at this list. If you use any of the passwords that are on this list, your account is extremely vulnerable. One of the first things that if somebody is trying to hack into accounts that they're going to do is they're going to try all of the most commonly used passwords that are used. And so this list is published, and I think it goes up to maybe 100 most common passwords. And so you can see right up there at the top is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because it's easy to remember. Password is also on this list. That used to be number one. Password used to be the number one password. And so you can see all of these, while they're easy to remember, this third column here shows that it takes less than a second for somebody to use that password to get into your account. And you can see over on the right how many accounts are using those passwords. So it's thousands upon thousands of people who are using very insecure passwords. And just thinking about like how quick it is for someone to get into an account using one of these, it's very, very simple. So that's one of the things that to watch out for, is to not use anything that is, definitely don't use anything that's on this list. You want to go ahead, Stacy. And then the next one talks about, so, even if you aren't using one of those most common passwords, there are other ways that your password might be hacked. When you hear about passwords getting hacked, a lot of times, or not a lot of times, sometimes they're using a brute force attack where they're pretty much trying every single possibility that your password could be. And so I've got this table over here kind of showing, so, if somebody is trying a brute force attack, they're literally running through, they're going to run through all of the common passwords that they know of, all the passwords that they know are commonly used. So that's what that first column is for. And then if that doesn't work, maybe they switch over to just trying random strings of letters, and they're going to go about it in a systematic way. So they're, going to try, A, and then if that doesn't work, A, B, and so on until, maybe they find a match. So, that's one way that it could potentially get hacked, but this actually gets more sophisticated if somebody uses what's called a dictionary attack, because most of us are not using a random string of characters. We're using words that are easy to remember, and so this brute force attack can change into a dictionary attack, which is just where they might try all of the A names or all the A words, and then try all the B words, and then so on. So trying different words just to see if maybe that is your password. So this is another way that your password could potentially get hacked. Another way that somebody might get your password is through phishing. And so if you've heard of this term before, phishing is when someone sends you an email or maybe they call you and then they ask what your password is. And so you can see in this picture on the left, there is this person has received an email from somebody claiming to be PayPal, but you can see up in the email address of who this is from. It's actually it says PayPal accounts, but it says @mailbox.com. So it's not actually coming from PayPal. It is coming from this other domain that is probably not associated with PayPal. So that's one thing that you can watch out for, is that if you're getting things in your email, alerts that say your account is expiring, or and we need you to log in with your login and username and password, that's kind of suspicious. And so another thing that you can look at is if you were to click one of these links, you can see over on the right, the website that it takes you to is still not PayPal. It looks like PayPal because it has that, the same logo, and the login looks right. But if you look up in the top at the web address of it, again, it's not PayPal.com. It's PayPal-accounts.com. So, it's not actually going to where you think it is. So this is another thing to watch out for when you're getting emails that maybe are trying to create some urgency and tell you that, you might be locked out of your account, or that there's something wrong with it. It could be a phishing attack. And so you want to check those indicators to see if it's an actual, if it's actually from the company that you think it is from. And so if somebody can't get your information through phishing, another way that they might get your information is through just gathering personal information from you from on the web. So you might have seen things like this over on the right, where people post on Facebook, tell us all these things about you, your first job, favorite food, favorite color, all of these things. And this was posted by the Davenport Police as just a reminder to not give people this personal information about you. Yes, it's fun, to, learn things about people, but you're also giving people who are trying to hack into your accounts more information to use against you. So going back to, like brute force attacks where they're trying to guess your password, this is kind of a level up from that, where, they're going to try your pet's name, they're going to try your favorite color to see if that is how they can get into your account. So always be careful about the information that you're sharing online, because it is, even if it is only to, quote unquote, your friends on Facebook, there are ways that that information can get to people who are not your friends, and who maybe want to use that information maliciously. And another, Stacy, go back. Another way that that this information might be used is that if you have an account, such as your bank account, which might have security questions, as another way of getting into your account, providing this personal information to somebody that you don't know could be a way that they could, quote unquote, recover your account via security questions, when it was just information they found online because you had, provided it in one of those, silly social media things. So that's another thing to watch out for. But so the next thing next way that a password might be stolen or hacked is not necessarily like directly targeted at you, but for companies that are not storing their password and information securely, they could get what's called, a data leak, where information is, stolen just because their, site maybe had a vulnerability. And so hopefully, anybody who has this problem, like the password is not in, plain text and instead is encrypted. But there are still ways of decrypting that information. And so while it might take a little bit of time, it's still possible. So I've got this example on this slide here of, so maybe your password was dog, which is another one of those common passwords you shouldn't use. But so maybe the company uses an algorithm to change that password into something. It can be hashed, which isn't really an encryption method, but it's just a different way that it can change, what the input is, so that it's not stored in that plain text. But anyway, so let's say it gets hashed, and so then the stored value is over here on the right, and so you can't see just by looking at it what that hash is. And then another way that people can add like an additional security. This is kind of on the IT side, but another like additional layer is that passwords can be salted, and so salted just means you add some extra random letters on it so that when it gets hashed or encrypted, it looks different. So you can see, dog just by itself is going to be stored as one value, but then if you salt it with something else, it gets stored as something else. And so it's just another way that companies can make passwords more secure, but it's not 100%. There are not any like there are not passwords or ways of storing data that cannot be not decrypted. There's too many negatives in that sentence. Anyway, your passwords, even though they might be encrypted, can still be, somebody could still like decrypt it. Anyway, so those are some things to think about when you're thinking about making your passwords, is that, there are various ways that your passwords can get stolen or hacked. And so, it's very important that when it is like that, you change that password as soon as possible, because if you, especially if that is like a very important account, like your bank account or something that has financial information in it, once they have information to one account, they have anything that you've also used that for other accounts. So if you're reusing passwords, it makes it very easy for them to just, try that same username and password on various different sites. And so definitely change your passwords if that does happen. Yes, and I just went over that. Back to you, Stacy.
Okay, thanks, Alyssa. Before we move on to good ideas, does anybody have any questions for Alyssa about the ways that passwords can be vulnerable? So I'm gonna give you a chance to jump in if you want to. Okay, very good. So then let's talk about some general good ideas when you're setting up your accounts. First of all, if you can create as few accounts as possible, that will make your life easier. For instance, many shopping websites let you check out as a guest, and then there just isn't one more instance of your email and a password out there in the world. It can be a good idea to delete accounts you no longer use. And the best scenario is having challenging passwords for every account. We're going to talk about the ways that you can do this. It's probably not going to be possible for you to memorize lots and lots of very challenging passwords. So if you were going to prioritize which ones you would make the best, your bank password for financial gain is important. Your email address, as Alyssa said before, if someone is able to get into your email account, then they can change all your other passwords and have all of your things. If someone gets into your social network, they could scam your friends by asking for money or sending out links. So you can prioritize which ones they can do the most damage with, for starters, if you're just going to dip your toe into better passwords. And someone asked in our last time we did this, does it matter what your password is if it's on an account that doesn't have financial information? And the answer is, if it's unique, maybe that's okay. But if the password that you use uses the same pattern as other passwords in your life, that could open you up to security issues. So let's move to the next slide here. So some tips for creating good passwords. You might have heard some of these, but we'll just review it all. So instead of using whole words with a number at the end, which is a very classic way to make a password, here's one way that you could approach things. So you could take a sentence, and here he's taken the first letter from each word and made it into what looks like just a random jumble of things, right? And there's a number for the one, there's a period, so that it should satisfy any kind of website's requirements about what your password needs to contain. And so here's just a few more examples. When I was 7, wow, that uses the whole word, ... does, and then they start doing the initials. And this is not exactly the standard quote. He changed the quote a little bit, because if you picked something that was very ordinary, maybe that would show up on a list somewhere as the first initial of the Star Wars quote. So this is one approach you could take to make a nice, strong password that you should also be able to remember, because it would be a sentence in your head. Another option is to use a passphrase. So this is where, this is sort of the direction that things are going when it comes to passwords. And the idea is that you would use 3 or 4 words separated by some kind of punctuation. And if you make sure that the words don't have a lot to do with each other, so you wouldn't want it to be, I don't know, like prince, princess, king, queen, right? Because those are way too related. You would want them to be a little nonsensical together. And then this can be hard for a computer to figure out if it just is doing that. Which kind of attack was that, Alyssa? Where it's just trying to pick all the brute force attack, right?
Yes, brute force with a dictionary attack.
Yes. So 1Password is a password manager that we're going to talk about a little bit later. And so you could get ideas just to get your brain going from this website. And then if you want to take it a little bit farther, this website recommends you use Diceware. And the idea is that they've got a huge list of random words. And then if you roll dice as you try to choose which words they'll be, then it should sort of bypass any bias you might have in your head about which words you like, and it can make it very difficult to figure it out. So what I did when I made a passphrase not long ago is I used the generator a few times, and then I picked 4 words that I thought I could remember. That they don't have a lot to do with each other, but it made sense in my head. This is the science behind it. We won't go really far into this, but this is sort of a classic password. They took a word, they maybe changed a letter into a number, they added the requisite punctuation and number at the end. And this indicates that, you know, it could be found in 3 days by a computer just randomly or methodically going through all of the options. When it comes to a passphrase, where there's 4 words, it estimates it could take 550 years. So that's because words make more sense to human brains than they do to computers. And so we can use that to our advantage. So we'll share this slideshow later if you wanted to analyze this a little bit more.
And I'll say too, part of that also is length. So length, the longer a password is, the more time it's going to take a computer to guess it. So that's one reason that this, you know, the 4 random words is going to take longer, is just because it has more characters in it. Whereas that first example there, it's really just 1 word with a few minor modifications, which, you know, we know, like, and we can program that into a computer to know that, you know, a 0 is a common substitution for the letter O. And so, you know, that's something that's very easy to like program into the guesses as well. So yeah, just length is another reason why it makes it much harder for a computer to guess.
Thanks, Alyssa. So as I was saying, using what our brains already like to do in our favor is a good idea. And so if anybody has read Moonwalking with Einstein and heard about the World Memory Championships, this might sound familiar, but basically if you can have a visual or a story in your head about the words that you're going to use, you start with the cartoon duck and then the 14 gloves or the 14-ounce coffee and then the gloves, that can just sort of help it stick in your head. And so that's definitely what I've done for my passphrase. That is my most important one. I've got a nice strong visual so that I won't forget. This person at Data Overhaulers also recommends choosing one of the words in every passphrase that you're going to create and knowing that you'll drop all of the vowels in that word. So like he did for gloves. The reason for this is that then it stops being something that shows up in the dictionary, becomes sort of nonsense letters again. And so that just makes it even harder for a computer to guess what your password is. There's a website out there, How Secure Is My Password, where you can test to see if your password is good or not. And I did double check that it's not collecting, as you type your password in there, it's not collecting it and trying to hack you. You can trust that one. And then if you wanted to see if your passwords have already been hacked, then this Have I Been Pawned or Owned website is from a security researcher, and you can see if it would be a good idea to change it. Okay, what's next? Okay, so any questions about how to create a strong password or anything else to add that you do that's a good trick?
There was a question that came in the chat asking about if you unsubscribe, does that delete your account? And so the answer is no. Unsubscribing from an email list does not delete your account. You would have to actively go in and request the deletion of your account. Unsubscribing just removes you from getting future emails.
Right. So that's going back to the suggestion of having as few accounts out there as possible. They might not make it easy to find the place to delete your account because they probably want to keep as many people involved in their enterprise as possible. But you could try it, or you could use their like customer service to see if they can help you delete account faster too. Anything else before we move on to your main options for how to control your passwords? Okay, and this is Alyssa.
Yes, so some of the options that you have, one that you may already be relying on is memorizing a few good passwords. So if you only have a couple of accounts, that could be a viable option for you. Maybe you only have your email or and maybe like a bank account. So memorizing them could be the way to go if you have only a few. Another option, you could write passwords down and keep that in a safe space. You have to, think about where is actually a safe space. You wouldn't want, there are a lot of things out there for putting your passwords in what's called a password book, which makes it very obvious that this is a place of passwords. So if somebody were to break into your house, they could find that, and then they would just have access to everything. So, it's kind of one of those things that if you are going to write them down and keep them physically at your house, then it's something you would kind of think about, where do I put my passport? You want to hide it in a good spot that's not super obvious. Another option would be letting your browser save your passwords. And so for this, you've probably seen, like if you're logging into an account on any modern browser, it's going to probably ask you, if you don't have it turned off, ask you if you want to save that with the browser. So this is also an option where it's kind of like an ease of access sort of thing where it just saves it for you. One thing though that you want to make sure that if you're going to use that option is that you password protect those passwords, because we'll see in just a second like how insecure it is if you don't password protect those. And then another way is by using your operating system to save your passwords, which is pretty similar to having your browser save it, where I think Apple's the main one that I know of, which has an option to do this. But again, it's very similar to the browser, saving it. And then, the last option is get a password manager. And you can always do like a hybrid of these as well. So it's not just, necessarily pick one. Maybe, you use a combination of things, and you make sure that, you're, like we've talked about before, like your high priority accounts, you use the highest security method there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you say like let your browser save your password, but you said, but then password protect it. I don't know. I don't think what you mean by I should password protect it.
Yeah, well, I think we have a screenshot, right? We'll show you on an upcoming slide.
Okay.
Thanks for that question, Joy. Yeah. I just want to add a couple more considerations as you consider these options. Think about how many devices you have and if they all use the same operating system. So if you had an iPhone and a Windows computer, you might not want to use that let your operating system option. And also, are you sharing accounts with others? Do other people need to be able to log in to your things that you might change the password on? Just some extra considerations.
Yes. Thanks, Stacey. Yeah, so this slide has various options of what it might look like if you're saving it in the browser. So you might have seen, when you log into that account and it pops up, would you like Chrome to save this password? Would you like Firefox to save this password? And so on. And so this is how, passwords could be saved. They go here, and you can, you'll see in several of these, you can say never. So if it's something you want to turn off for that site, next time you log in, it won't ask you if you want to save it. Otherwise, you could say not now is also another option. And so this is what it would look like if you're having your browser save your passwords. And then for having your operating system save your password, over on the right is an example of Apple's version, which is called iCloud Keychain. So if you have an Apple device, you might have seen this as well. And so that's something that you can turn on, and it works very similarly to a password manager. And over on the left, you'll see that this is one reason that you want to password protect, is that if you see the little eye icon next to those passwords, if you don't have any sort of password protecting your passwords, anybody who has access to your browser could click on that and then be able to see in plain text what your password is. So it's very insecure to be saving with your browser, without password protecting it. And that's another thing is, I forgot to mention before, of like, if you're using your browser to save your passwords, you have to be really good about like clicks on any website. Like if you click on a malicious link, there are ways that they could potentially get that information from your browser, especially if it's not password protected. So, if you, it's leaving it up to be vulnerable. So I'll just put that out there that, using your browser is not going to necessarily be as secure as using a password manager, just because, the browser is doing a lot of other things. Like their teams that work on browsers, they're trying to make the best browser possible. Whereas, when you go with a dedicated password manager, that's the entire thing that they're doing for you. Is when you use that password manager, that team is solely focused on keeping your password safe. So that's just another, consideration to think about, especially if you're saving a lot of them.
Alyssa, I can't
yeah.
remember if we have a slide showing how to make the password on your browser. I'm going to click ahead. No. So should we demonstrate that? Did you, Joy, do you know what browser you tend to use on your computer or phone? Oh, and you're muted, Joy.
Chrome.
Use Chrome. Yeah, would it be easy for you, Alyssa, to sort of show where to click for that?
Yeah. So I'll take over sharing.
I think you have permission, but if you don't, let me know.
Yeah, no, we should be good. Okay, so if you're in your browser, and so we're just going to look at Chrome real quick. So it might be different if you're using a different browser, but they're all pretty similar. So you're going to go into your settings, the three little dots over in the right, and look for the settings in this menu. And so then once you get to your settings, you can check for the autofill. And so under autofill is where you have your passwords. And so this is, I don't have anything stored here. And you can see that I logged into my email from this browser earlier and I clicked that never save option. And so it put it down here. But so if I had saved passwords, they would appear here, just like that screenshot I had shown earlier. And for password protecting, actually, I don't know if it's here. Now that we get in here, I thought it would be in. So there are some options in here for, offering to save passwords. Oh, I know Google does it by default now. It used to be you had to set a password to do this. Firefox, you do have to set a password. I remember now that. So I will type in another website and see if I can get it to. So this isn't a real one, but let's see if it asks me. So see how it pops up here and says, do you want to save this? So let's say save. So even though it didn't work, it still asked me if I wanted to save it. So now if I go back to this, this page, you can see it has a little eye. And if I click on it, Google now asks me to retype in what my computer password is to be able to see it. So I forgot that Chrome did make that change. So there is this added level of security, but if it's a shared computer and that password for the computer is common and lots of people know it, then this isn't necessarily going to be secure. But this is an added level of security that Chrome has added. Whereas, let me see if, I'm going to pull up Firefox real quick, just so you can see it there. So if I'm in Firefox, I'll do the same thing, where I'll try to log in. Oh, and this one has an actual. Okay, so I'll say save that. And then if I go into my settings in Firefox, it is under, so privacy and security, and then under logins and passwords. And so this is where you can set, they call it a primary password. And so I can say, use a primary password, and then I can set in a password to make sure that, somebody wouldn't have access to those. So this is, if you're a Firefox user, this is what it looks like there. So I'll go ahead and cancel that.
Okay, we'll go back to slides. Okay, were you done with this slide, Alyssa?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so going back, so the last option that we had in our list was, use a password manager. And I highly recommend it if you have, a lot of accounts, which, these days we do. I don't know if you're like me, but I feel like my accounts doubled during the pandemic. I'm doing a lot more online than I used to. And so password managers, they're a great option for being able to keep all of your passwords in one secure location. And a lot of these will have various features that you're just not going to find with, your browser option, or, just writing things down. And so you can see this first column has, what it costs. There are some with free options and some without. And they also have family plans. So if it's something that you would want to share with somebody else, I personally have a family plan that I share with my partner as well as my parents. So that could also be an option that you could look into. And then, various ones use different devices as well. So most of them are unlimited. It looks like just Dashlane has a one device option for, I think, their free tier, and then the paid one is for more devices. And a lot of them have breach reports. So if there is a data leak, if your account has been, account information has been leaked, it's going to tell you that. So that's another really nice feature for if you're, I think it's only for paid options, but it's a really nice feature for being able to alert you so you don't have to watch and, be checking constantly to see if your account has account information has been compromised. And so, there's also different storage options. And the other nice thing about using a password manager is the majority of them use they will just try to fill in a very secure password for you. So when you're setting up, let's say you need to sign up for a new account, it's going to suggest a very strong password that you could use. And I really like this feature because then it saves me from having to go to an alternative site where it would, try to, where I'd have to generate one and then copy and paste it and bring it back. My password manager just does that for me. So that is another really nice feature. And so
the other thing that does is when you've entered an account that you made before, where you already made up that password, some of them will tell you, we reviewed your accounts and you've got a little work to do on this one where you said, password 123. And so it's sort of prompting you to bring everything up to the standard that they expect.
yes, yeah. When and I can just kind of talk about like my personal experience with it a little bit, that like when I first set it up, at first I didn't do anything comprehensive. Like I had it maybe like a month where I was just, I would only put in a new account when I would log into a new one. And then I, sat down for a week and actually went through every single account I could think of and like methodically put them in. And so that was kind of like the first step. And then like second step was like actually going back and changing the passwords that were either reused or like insecure. And so, just because you get one doesn't mean that you have to like you can, it's a process. You can take it slowly and like start using it and getting used to it. But in the notes, you'll see on this page that, some are more user-friendly than others. One of the top rated ones is 1Password. That's what I use. I have a lot of friends who use it, but I know that like some IT professionals that I know use like Bitwarden or Dashlane, and I know of other people who use LastPass as well. So, you're getting a lot of the same things. It's just kind of like thinking about like what's important to you for features, and what are you willing to spend on that as well. So, Stacey, you want to go forward?
Yeah, and let me add one more note. So we've picked some that are very popular and lots of people are using them because you probably want to pick one that's well used with lots of users so that it'll stick around and you won't find that they go out of business in the next couple months and you've got to start all over again. So you want one that's kind of well known, and then also these all are transparent about how their security models work. So if you wanted to look more into one of them and see how exactly does this work and do I want to put my trust into this, they should really be transparent and upfront about how they operate so that you know that it's something that's worth your time and money.
Yes, trust is very important with password managers because obviously like that all of that information can, if it was in the wrong hands, like it gives them a lot of information about you and they can do a lot of bad things with it. So it is important to find one that you feel like you can put that trust in. And so then we have some screenshots of what it looks like. So this is 1Password, and just like showing you over on the left what it looks like in the browser for, you've got your accounts that you have logins for, and then over on the right, if you've clicked on one of those, it'll tell you, these are the details, and it has, login password and strength, and you can put any other notes in there as well. That's I find that helpful for if I want to remember other things about the login as well. And so that's what it looks like in the password manager itself. And then over on the right, it shows you. So when I go to a new website that I'm creating an account for, you can see that use suggested password option in there, where it'll automatically pull in something that is strong, so that you're not just making one up off the top of your head. And it has, if you've installed it in your browser, it has that the shortcut up in the upper right hand corner where you can click on that, and there's settings and things for using it as well. So that's creating a new one. If you're logging into an old one, it also has that the icon for it over in the right of the field, so that you can click on that and it'll autofill in your information there. So again, you're not having to copy and paste that over yourself. So I think that's all on this. You want to switch. So this is an example of what it looks like on mobile. This is iPhone, where again, if you have tapped into that field where you need to fill in your information, it'll ask you, do you want to log in using the information that you have in your password manager? And then in this case, it's using biometrics. So if you have you're using your thumbprint or something for your login, you can use that for your password as well, or for your password manager as well, instead of like having to type in your full password for it. And then in the next slide, we have what it looks like on Android. It's very similar, slightly different. This was from mine, and when you tap in a field and it asks, do you want to autofill with one password? It wouldn't let me take a screenshot of like typing in mine. I don't use the biometrics on my phone, and so I actually have to type in my full master password anytime I want to use it. But yeah, so it looks pretty similar. So
yeah, let me pause us for a second. I'm not sure we explained this point. So the password manager holds all of your accounts, and it makes up passwords, or you put in your password. And then in order to let them log you into something, you have this one master password that gives you access to all of your accounts. So, so if you were using it in a web browser, if I went to go log in with my one password, I would have to type in my master one password. On my phone, since I did my thumbprint, I did not have to type anything. It just trusted that I was the right person for that. Does that all make sense? Or any other questions about how they work?
yeah, thanks for adding that, Stacy.
You might have said it, but I feel like it's worth
remembering. No, I
So
didn't. I definitely forgot to talk about there's the one password to rule them all.
Yes, and so that's why when I was talking about ways to make a strong one, even if you use the password manager, you still need to have one really good password protecting all of them for that.
Okay. So if you get one password, then you have to choose a master password to start?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you, and this, it's for any password manager. So if you choose any of the other ones that were also on the other slide or any others, when you sign up for that, you're going to, that's the first thing you set is you set a master password, which you'll have to then use every time you want to use it in the future. And so that, solves the problem of having to remember all of your account passwords. You just remember the one password, and then that's it. And so you can use that, and that gains you access to your password manager storage, which then gets you access to any accounts that you've saved.
The other thing that's nice about it is that at the same time that I set up my password manager, it's also when I set up my first passphrase. And so for me, it's 4 words separated by a dash. And to me, that's so much better than trying to remember, did I switch this letter to a number? And what was I thinking when I made that password? If it's just that I'm remembering 4 words, that's so much easier on me. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, let's see what the next slide is. Oh, moving on to data leaks. Okay, so we can come back to password manager talk at the end if there's anything else that wasn't clear. But one of the ways that your passwords become vulnerable is if there was a data leak or a breach. So that's like years ago, like Target's accounts were hacked. And so anybody who had a Target credit card, their information was taken by someone, right? And so sometimes if that happens, the company may send you an email or a message letting you know that that something went wrong and that you might want to change your password. You might also get an alert on your device depending on what type you have. On my iPhone, I got a message once that said that my Etsy password, change it. So you might see things that way. The password managers, as we said before, many of them monitor for breaches. So they know that you've got an account with, Amazon and Gmail and whatever. And so if there's a big problem with any one of those companies, then they will let you know that it's time to protect yourself. You can also check for yourself at this website that I mentioned before. You can search by your email address and see if there were any mass data breaches that included your email address, phone number, if you use your phone to log into things, or you can also search there to see if your password shows up in online collections of leaked passwords. Could be that, anyone who's trying to break into accounts would use that kind of collection first to see if they can find a match. And so you want yours to be pretty unique and not showing up in a list. So if you do find yourself as part of a data leak, and to be honest, I feel like we're all going to be there at some point, right? It's just happening a lot. So the things you want to do are change your password with that website. You don't have to change your email address, but change your password. And then if you have used that password anywhere else or something very similar in other accounts, change it there. Any questions about?
I have one question.
I mean, hopefully it won't happen to you, but yeah.
One question about if I used a password on a site that just really didn't matter to me. It was just like, I don't know. There are just some sites that just seem silly. Like, would it still matter if that password was breached somehow? Like maybe just photo site, or I can't think right now of sites that I've used password just so I can go back and see something or do something, but nothing important is linked to it. Do I still always need to go change that password?
I'm going to let Alyssa answer that, because I totally understand your feeling, and I also maybe have left some unchanged. So we'll hear from our IT professional.
Yes, so my recommendation is, regardless of like how you feel about that site and whether you feel like the information there is important or not, definitely change that password, because even if it doesn't necessarily have financial information on it, it's still going to have data from you, and that's personal. And so it's better to change that password so that somebody doesn't have easy access to that. It's just better to, because otherwise, if you're not changing that password, then you're just leaving that door open, and you're inviting anybody who has access to that data leak to use your account then. And you definitely don't want to leave that open for somebody.
Okay, sorry, I don't know if you can hear, but my computer is going a little bit nuts about a USB that it can't find. So I've changed all my windows here. Okay, so thanks, Alyssa. Any other questions? Can you hear the little alert sound on my computer?
No.
Okay, good. that's something. Okay, we have one final thing to bring up that you might want to think about, and this is planning for the future. And I'm gonna see if I can open up this page, and the answer is not really. Bear with me for just a second. So the point of this section is, what would happen when you pass away? Do you need to take some steps so that the people in your life are able to help wrap up your accounts or have access if they also need access to them, and maybe you were the only one who had that password set up. Anyway, so can you see this article now? Yeah, okay. So this is just an article from PC Magazine. You can find other things out there that will help you work through the most important topics here. But the idea is that you can create an emergency kit, or you could create a list of things for someone to be able to get into your password manager. Or if you just use regular passwords, you could have sort of a master list somewhere. You would not want to save this just anywhere. You would want it to be somewhere that only, like maybe in a safe or something, that only someone who knew your home and knew you could get to. And then Facebook has a new feature that you can set up someone who will manage your account after you pass away. They can do the things on this list here. They can request that it be removed. They can respond to friend requests, and then they can manage who sees the comments on your account. So if that's important to you, you might want to think about finding someone for that and setting it up. Google has an inactive account manager. And so you could look into that as well. Basically, if your account is inactive for a certain amount of time, it would automatically give it over to someone who you trust. Two-factor authentication. So this is the thing where you might try to log in, and then it also sends something to your phone, a little code that you put in. You just want to think about that. If someone else needs access to your account, do they have everything that they need to be able to get into it later? And then just thinking about backup files, just as another digital thing. So you wouldn't have to do any of these steps if you are like a single person like me, or if you've got very separate accounts from the people in your family, but it's something you might want to consider if the things apply to you, and if losing all of the access to your accounts would make you nervous for someone else in your life. I'm going to stop the recording